One of my favorite quotes that I have from a client, she told me that it took a set of Clydesdale horses to come to her home and drag her to assisted living. And what she really wishes was that someone had brought those Clydesdale horses to her months before, because her life was so easy now that she had somebody to take care of things for her.
Welcome to Aging Choices Unfiltered. I'm so excited to launch this new podcast about care options for older adults and their families. I'm Terry Sullivan, the co-founder of Aging Choices, and I'm joined by my fellow co-founder, Brenda Lamone.
Great to be here again, Terry.
Brenda, I'm not sure about you, but when I started helping my grandmother look at senior living communities back way before I worked in the senior living industry, I had no idea about the different types of senior living options available. But one thing, since we've been working together inside the senior living space, as well as when we launched agingchoices.com, is we've seen that consumers may have a misconception, or they may lump assisted living in nursing homes into the same category. Would you agree on that based on what you've seen?
Oh, absolutely. I actually discovered firsthand here. I come from the industry, and when my dad ended up in the hospital, he was in independent living, as I mentioned before. He ended up in the hospital, and I assumed he would just go right back to possibly memory care or some type of assisted living, and I wasn't sure what he needed. And sure enough, he did need skilled nursing and a nursing home for rehab. And it's definitely something that you don't really think about until you're in the situation. So it's great information to know, and I'm really excited we have a guest that can help to explain that to us.
Exactly. So on today's show, we're going to do just that. We're going to demyth some of those misconceptions. We have a very special guest that's going to help us explain the differences between nursing homes and assisted living, or maybe even group homes, which seems to be kind of a new arrival on the senior living front. When I was working with my grandmother, really understanding the differences before I was thrown in it to be really, really key. So let's welcome Cynthia Perthuis to help sort this all out. Cynthia is a certified senior advisor and elder care strategist with Senior Care Authority out of New York. Cynthia, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Just to clarify, I'm also out of Florida. So I do work in New York City and Southwest Florida along the Southwest coast. So it gives me the best of both worlds.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Cynthia, can you share a little bit about your background in the services that Senior Care Authority offers, just to help our listeners understand what perspective you're coming from?
Sure. So a little bit about my background. First and foremost, I'm a baby boomer. And I come from decades on Wall Street. So my sister and I managed the care and the living choices for our parents before they died. My father had Alzheimer's. My mother had Parkinson's. I left my corporate job about 3 years ago to work in a franchise for Senior Care Authority. And I wanted to be in an industry that served this aging demographic. So Senior Care Authority offers a number of services, including senior living placement, elder care consulting, and other services to help our clients as they transition through their living choices.
Excellent. That was a really great overview. As you mentioned, you work in the New York and Florida areas. One of the things that we mentioned is that consumers tend to use assisted living and nursing home terminology interchangeably. And that often, consumers may not understand the difference, but there is a big difference. But for some reason, they get lumped together, and it's probably just history of how the industry evolved. Why don't we start with a basic understanding of these options? Cynthia, would you provide a basic overview of a nursing home, which is now really called skilled nursing, versus assisted living?
What I'd like to do is I'd like to back up just a little bit before we talk about the details of the skilled nursing. And
Sure.
One of the things I found interesting, as you were both talking about in the intro about your experiences, the words grandmother and nursing home were used in the same sentence many times.
Sure.
And that's what I like to tell my clients is that we're not talking these days about your grandmother's nursing home. Things are just different. And nursing home is just not a phrase that traditionally should be used. And so what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the difference between assisted living and nursing home, if that's okay with you, before we dig into the nursing home piece.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Okay. So one of the things, again, the nursing home shouldn't be used. I don't want to say it's not used, but it shouldn't be used anymore. It's helpful to think about the two terms that are commonly used now. That's assisted living, and then that's skilled nursing. And I like to think of them this way: assisted living, and then skilled nursing. So assisted living is a place to assist people to live. And skilled nursing is a place to skillfully nurse people back to health. So that's your definition right there of assisted living and skilled nursing. Assisted living is a social model, while skilled nursing is a hospital model. So not to confuse things, but we also have independent living and we have memory care. We can talk about those a little bit later. But again, assisted living assists people in a social manner, and skilled nursing skillfully nurses people back to health.
That is so sensical.
That's really well done. Yes, well said.
Thank you. So if you want, now we can really dig into, let's talk about a skilled nursing facility and what they do.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I love that. Good, that would be great.
So a skilled nursing facility is really set up for short-term recovery, and that would be short-term of 100 days or less. While there's another piece of skilled nursing, which is also called, not to confuse things, but a long-term care facility. That's set up for long-term health issues that can't be addressed in any other facility. So skilled nursing is something that is a place where you go between times. You've fallen, you've hurt yourself. Whereas long-term care are people who have needs of 24/7 nursing care that may include catheters, non-ambulatory issues, special diets, tracheotomies, things that are almost like a hospital setting.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So, with regards to that, and often, and I think Brenda went through this, and Brenda, maybe you can talk about your experience with your dad going into the hospital, because that's exactly what happened, right? Is he had an event, and that event precipitated him needing some type of skilled care. Brenda, do you want to just kind of talk about that a little bit for our listeners so they can actually see an example of maybe how that happens?
Sure. He was in full independent living. It was showing some signs of memory issues, but nothing too bad. And it kind of got up in the middle of the night, was a little dizzy, ended up in the hospital, and the hospital, I think, thought he was much worse than he was, and we, they couldn't figure out what was wrong. So he was in the hospital for quite a while until they could find a skilled nursing for him to rehabilitate him, or which they call a rehab, which I think Cynthia can kind of explain that in a much better way. But once you finish your rehab, you need to go back to either an assisted living, a independent with home care, or what we thought he needed, memory care. And it was navigating that was a little difficult. Once he was in the hospital, they were going to discharge him into a skilled nursing, and finding one was a little bit difficult, and we didn't really know what our options were. And that was another reason we started Aging Choices, so you can go on and actually look at what's available. Once we did find one, it was what we used to call a nursing home. It was a skilled nursing facility, but it was for rehab. So Cynthia, I'd love to know kind of the difference, because he wasn't getting medical care, but he was in a skilled nursing for rehab.
Well, one of the things that we want to think about in skilled nursing is that within one building, there could be a variety of these different types of choices there. There could be someone who on one floor is in rehab. There could be someone for let's say a fall. They've broken a hip and they need to go to physical therapy, occupational therapy, and they need to begin learning to walk again. People who have their knees replaced, they go to rehab, but they're in a building that is a skilled nursing facility, if you will. Sometimes when you're in that building, you don't get better. Maybe it's something that's more dramatic has happened to you besides a fall or a knee replacement, and you move to another floor, which is long-term care. And maybe you do have some memory issues. You may move to another floor that's a memory care floor. So there's a variety of things that go on in a building that could be titled the New York City Rehab Facility, or they could call it the New York City Skilled Nursing Facility. They can call it a number of things, but we're still doing rehab or nursing within that same building.
Interestingly, as you're both speaking about, Brenda, your experiences, and Cynthia, kind of the education around it, there's really a tie-in to sort of what's referred to often as like a continuum of care, or the care continuum. There's a timeline of events that happen, and often they're on the fly. These decisions are on the fly because some unexpected, life event happens, like you mentioned, Cynthia, a fall. So when you really think about this, it's someone, could be living at home, they have a fall, they end up going in for rehab within a skilled nursing facility to get them back up on their feet. And they may or may not be able to return home, or may not need more services. So then at that point, they could look at assisted living, or potentially even home care or memory care. So there's definitely a sort of timeline here. And I think what Brenda experienced, and what I think some consumers experience as well, is something happens and you're not ready for it, and you're not educated on it. And that's one of the reasons we put this series together. Does that make sense, as far as that timeline, and thinking of it that way to help clarify for people when they're thinking about the difference between skilled nursing and or assisted living?
The timeline is a very important defining point. The other thing that I think is an important defining point is, how is it paid for?
Right.
So we can talk about the fact that, let's say you're at home or you're in an independent living situation and you fall and you break a hip. That's the common thing that happens. You fall and you break something. Yes. So you would traditionally go to the hospital. You've broken something. You go to the hospital for 2 or 3 days, and then you go to a skilled nursing for rehab. That skilled nursing stay is less than 100 days. And dependent upon the situation, but traditionally, Medicare pays for that stay in skilled nursing. So a lot of times people want to stay in this rehab skilled nursing as long as they can, that Medicare is paying for it. Because once they leave that facility, that financial burden comes to them privately, traditionally. So that's one of the ways you can look at it, is that it's a difference in the way that it's paid.
Sure.
When you're in the skilled nursing and the rehab, as long as you're progressing, you can stay for that 100 days, but you come to a point where it's time for you to go someplace. But you're not, let's take the hip as an example. You're not comfortable going back to your home that has 1, 2, 3 levels that include stairs. You're not comfortable being there. Or let's say you lived alone and you're not comfortable getting up in the middle of the night to go to the restroom. So that's when the decision has to be made about what's going to happen next. Because just because you've been in a rehab, in a skilled nursing for 100 days, doesn't mean you're cured. You still have some issues that came from having that fall. So that's when you make a decision to bring in care into your home, or you go to assisted living. And maybe you just go to assisted living for 30, 60, 90 days. There is that possibility. It's not because you go there, you stay there forever. Or maybe it's the time you decide to stay forever at assisted living. So there's a variety of things that happen. But again, it's about what they're doing in skilled nursing and who pays in skilled nursing.
And that was a big driver for us, in that, he didn't have the 100 days. It was a much shorter period of time. and they kind of gave us a deadline and said, okay, Medicare is going to pay for it up to this date. And then starting the next day, we're going to start billing you, $470 a day or whatever it was, right? And I did hear after the fact that we could have probably put in to extend it or, requested that, but we made the decision to move him. But it's a big driving factor. I definitely agree with you.
Well, and I think something that you also said here that's important is that you found out after the fact. There's so much information that people do not know, and they don't have an education around this, which is one of the reasons I got into this industry. I thought how hard could this be to learn all of this when I was working with my parents, and I found out it was incredibly hard and incredibly difficult.
Yeah, with my grandmother, she exactly the same situation. I believe it was a knee, not a hip. When she went home, some of the factors that she was thinking about was safety and security. If she moved back home, would she be alone? Would there be somebody there? And she did look at home care versus assisted living for that post support after she came out of rehab. But in the end, she ended up falling into the decision to move into assisted living. So this might be a nice segue. We've talked about skilled nursing, what a skilled nursing facility is and the different types of services from rehab to long-term care. Maybe this is a good segue to really talk about assisted living, which Cynthia, you called a social model, which I think is really interesting. AARP has released a lot of information about older Americans and isolation, right? So let's talk a little bit about the assisted living model, which does include memory care, which is more specialized. But maybe we can move into the assisted living model and talk a little bit about what assisted living is, because I do believe that there's a misconception of what assisted living is out there. I have been in many, 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 many communities just based on what Brenda and I have done in our career. And some of them have residents with higher acuity and seem a little less vibrant. But I think it would be great to talk about assisted living and what that includes and what it means, if that sounds okay.
Sure. One of the things I want to talk about a little bit is the history of assisted living. So, we still talk about this nursing home model, and there was a woman in Oregon, I don't have her name in front of me, but she, in the late 70s, she was really trying to work out a solution for her mother. She wanted to develop a new model from a nursing home. She didn't want to put her mother in a nursing home. She wanted to put her someplace that was what I would term kinder and gentler place to live. So the first published use of the term assisted living was in 1984. So you can tell, I have children who were born in 1984. So that's a very recent occurrence that we really even had the term assisted living. But the model was developed to give residents a private space where was their own home, their didn't have a hospital bed in it. You weren't sharing it with someone theoretically, and as well as large shared spaces. It also was a way to cluster the care so that the cost could be more reasonable and more specialized. And you weren't paying for someone to come into your home at $400 a day or more, but you had someone who was there for you during the night. So that was the whole idea when assisted living was developed in those late 70s, early to mid 80s. Yeah. And, as you mentioned, AARP talking about the isolation piece, there is a report that speaks about the fact that the lack of social interaction for an elderly person, and I would posit for any person, is as bad as a pack of cigarettes a day. And so, yes, you can say, I've got all these nurses who are here at home. I have someone who comes in and maybe teaches me yoga, but you're missing the social interaction. And I have clients when I have this discussion with them and they'll say, my dad was never social. He doesn't need to be in a social environment because he was never social. But social looks at two different ways of doing things. It looks at it from maybe what we consider the basic definition, There's a lot of activities in assisted living. There's 2 or 3 options every hour for people to do activities. Well, maybe your dad doesn't really want to do activities. He doesn't want to play cards. He doesn't want to go to book club. However, I bet your dad really likes to sit and read the newspaper and just watch the people go by. And that is also social interaction. It doesn't have to be such an active place. It can be more passive and just watching people, and that's very good for people's for their health.
It makes total sense. From the perspective of, I think even Marriott might have gotten into assisted living very, very early on when it came out in the early 80s. So the history on it was really terrific. The one thing that we didn't talk about, or that you didn't mention, is so mainly in assisted living, when you say it's a social model, it's also a model that allows an older adult to have some assistance with some of their daily activities, or what we call, or the industry calls, ADLs, activities of daily living. Can you talk about the things that are, part of assisted living and assisting consumers with their activities of daily living?
Sure. One of the ways I like to describe and help people understand the activities of daily living is think of yourself and think about how you start your day. You wake up, you get out of the bed, you go to the restroom, you take a shower, you put your clothes on, you have your breakfast. Those are your activities of daily living. And so let's just say that you are able, or your loved one is able to wake up and sit up in bed, but they have a difficult time in those first early morning hours of getting to the restroom, or they have a difficult time, or they're a little bit afraid of taking a shower by themselves. They just want somebody to stand by. Those are activities of daily living, as well as we all know someone that we love that is older, that has the massive pill case sitting on their kitchen cabinet that has all of these pills, and they're set up at AM and PM, and you take this every third day, and on a full moon you take that one. The assisted livings have the ability to do medication management. So they're not in your space. They come in and maybe they help you get your clothes on and they go away. They come in and they help you, they provide you your medication and they go away. So those are the things that they help with in assisted living. They just, again, they assist you in doing your things. They also provide 3 meals a day and snacks and a happy hour. So you don't have to worry about that because they got that all taken care of. They also provide you transportation most of the time. Once you go into assisted living, they don't lock the door and throw away the key. There are people who live in assisted living who still do volunteer work at the hospital. There are people who live in assisted living who still have part-time jobs or full-time jobs as an attorney. They just have a place where they're with like-minded people that they know that they're safe and that they're taken care of.
You just hit on the nail on the head on my next question. One of the reasons why my grandmother Betty chose assisted living is because she was nervous that, and she may not be safe. And if something happened to her, whether she fell at home and she was alone, I know there are things like Life Alert out there and other things that can support people that do want to stay in their home. And it's a very personal decision. But, having somebody there or knowing somebody is there in the case that something does happen is also a great part of assisted living as well. Would you agree with that?
I agree that it's a great part of assisted living. It's a great part of assisted living for the actual resident, because they know that when they go to bed at night, that if something happens, that there is somebody that's within 2 minutes away that they can buzz or call that can come and help them. Yeah. It's also a great benefit for the family. So as families, we are not, most of us are not trained to be caregivers. We've lived our lives being children, or lived our lives being spouses. We haven't lived our lives being a nurse and caring for this person. And so when someone is safe and taken care of through the night, the children are not worried about getting that call at midnight from mom, are not getting that call at midnight from the EMS service who's been called. We have clients who don't know who else to call, and they want some food and they can't figure out how to cook their food. They'll call 911, and that 911 call then goes to the children. And so once this loved one is put in a safe place, those phone calls stop. And the family can just be more of a family as opposed to being stressed all the time about what's going on during the night. I didn't hear from mom. Did she fall and she just wasn't able to call anyone? It takes away that worry.
Sure. And from the resident or the older adult's perspective is they have some peace of mind that if in the case something does happen, there's someone there to support them.
Correct.
So that makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Fran, did you want to add anything there? I'm sorry. I think I cut you off.
No, that's all right. No, I was just going to say how true that was, because, you know, when my parents were living in a house and they called me up one day and said, "Oh, we're moving into senior living community." It was such a relief once they were there, because we would be going over, cleaning their gutters, doing all these things whenever there was an issue. And it's really been, for peace of mind, it's been great having them, you know, in a place where I know they can get help. And, you know, when my dad did fall, you know, the security there was there, and it wasn't, you know, my mother trying to lift him up off the floor. So it really gives you the peace of mind as an adult daughter. I can attest to that.
Well, and something else I hear from my clients is, from the adult daughters, is they'll say, you know, my parents are never going to want to do this. They want to stay in their home. They're never going to want to do this. And regularly, I have residents, I have the mothers who say to me, out of the earshot of their daughters, "Thank you so much for finding me a place. I feel so much more comfortable because I'm here." They don't want their daughters to know. They want to be seen.
Yeah.
You know, I think about as a parent of my own adult children, I want them to think of me as independent and strong and fearless. And I'll be that way, I'm sure, when I'm, you know, in my elderly years.
I think so, I myself included. But no, and a year before, my parents said the words, "We will never move in to senior living."
Yes.
And a year later, they just out of the blue called me up and said they were moving.
Right.
So it was, yeah, exactly.
Well, and I work with clients and with their families to help them come together and have consensus on what's best for the family as a whole. It's really not about an individual. It's about what's best for the family and the family dynamic. And one of my favorite quotes that I have from a client, she told me that it took a set of Clydesdale horses to come to her home and drag her to assisted living. And what she really wishes was that someone had brought those Clydesdale horses to her months before, because her life was so easy now that she had somebody to take care of things for her.
Wow. That's also something within the industry or the senior living space that some of the communities deal with as well, is that people wait very late to make that transition, which adds a lot of stress on the older adult, because there's moving, there's downsizing, there's a lot that's going on. So if people did have more of an open mind to looking at this earlier versus being in a 911 mode, it would be less stress on everybody overall.
Right.
You know, the one thing that we didn't talk about, and maybe one way we could wrap this up, is to talk a little bit about assisted living and the nuances of assisted living. Memory care actually falls under assisted living, but there's specialties with helping folks with dementia-related problems. So maybe we could talk a little bit about memory care as it sits under the assisted living umbrella, and what that looks like when somebody might look at a memory care community as an option.
Sure. One of the things that I like to talk about is the fact that people with some memory care requirements can live in an assisted living community. But an assisted living person would not want to live in a memory care community. So a memory care community usually has a lockdown component for the case of wanderers, and everything is focused on residents with memory care. Well, assisted living allows clients with memory issues to stay there as long as they can, as long as they're not disturbing other residents and are not a danger to themselves or others. So it's fluid between the assisted living and memory care. However, once you cross the line to a true memory care community, you very rarely cross the line back over to assisted living. Does that help a little bit without, I don't want to sound too confusing on it, but
Mm-hmm.
memory care is focused on people with dementia related illnesses and focuses on them. So they're relatively not independent. They need a lot of help.
That makes complete sense. And, we've also heard inside of assisted living, when somebody is showing some signs of memory loss, what they call a bridging program. So they could have specific programming or support for folks that are starting to show some memory loss before they actually need a full memory care community, or sometimes they call it neighborhood within assisted living. So that makes a complete sense.
Right. The bridging is I'm seeing it as a newer idea, and it's a really great idea.
I think so as well. It allows people to feel more empowered with their lives and still continue to feel independent. It makes total sense.
Right.
Cynthia, how can our listeners learn more about your services?
Well, they can learn more about the services on my website. One of the things I really would like to make sure that I talk about is a way that families can be proactive in making some of these decisions and not waiting for the 911 crisis time. The way I like to work with my families is helping them understand, I go back to that old saying of, how do you eat an elephant? And the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So we like to go through the decision process and put it into 3 buckets. And those 3 buckets are where, when, and how. And every family can work on the where right now. And that where is, where would you go if you needed to go? There are so many options. And the time to figure out the options and do that homework is before someone has a crisis, before they break a hip, before they get lost and the police have to bring them home. So you want to think about, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be geographically, culturally, mentally, financially? There's so many different options. And once you figure out where, you can put that in a file and put it away. And we could then talk about the when and the how later. A lot of times my clients will come to me and they'll say, oh, my mom needs to go, but she has a lot of stuff. She has a big house we need to sell. We need to get rid of her car. She has a cat. They go through all of these concerns and these issues, but really we just need to figure out where. Where would she go if she needed to go? We'll figure out all the other things later. So that's one of the things I want to encourage people to just be thinking about it now.
Exactly why we put this podcast together.
Right.
Well, I was going to say that's the power of planning, as we think that's really, really important. Yes.
Yeah, it's really important. And it's important to know, again, we also get that phone call that says, I hear there's a lot of waiting list. I hear there's no room. I hear it's really expensive. Okay, let's just put all those things aside. We're going to have to talk about those things, but we don't have to talk about those today. Let's eat that elephant one bite at a time. Let's figure out where. And as far as finding out what we do and how we do, one of the things that my team, I have a team in New York and the team in Florida, and I'm a part of a nationwide network of about 60 people who do this all over the country and Canada. But we wrap our families up in what I like to call a blanket of care. Our job is to understand everything about that family and the future resident. And our mission is to make any transition smooth, whether it's moving into a community or whether it's bringing help into your home. We're trained to understand all the nuances of all of the options. And you can find out more about my business and my services at www.scanyfl. So that stands for Senior Care Authority, New York and Florida. So www.scanyfl.com. And on that website, there's a lot of helpful tabs that can give you some resources that you may not know you need to have. It will give you some reading material. There's some podcasts there, some webinars there. There's a lot of educational content on that site. And it also talks about the different things that we do to help families.
That's fantastic. And, as we launch Aging Choices and more podcasts and more information, it's really great to know that we have advisors in our network that are as thoughtful, educated as you are. And also you live a very similar mission as we do, right? To help families find the right care. So thank you again, Cynthia Perthuis, certified advisor and elder care strategist with Senior Care Authority. Thank you for joining the show today. It was really interesting, and I can say I learned a lot as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you both for having me and providing an audience. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Great. If you are a caregiver, you won't want to miss our next episode. We'll be joined by Molly Rowe, owner of First Light Home Care in Swampscott and Marblehead, Massachusetts, as we discuss part-time support options for caregivers. And don't be a stranger to the show. We want to hear from you. This isn't just our show about senior care options. This is your show. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Aging Choices and Twitter at My Aging Choices, and tell us what topics you'd like us to talk about. And visit agingchoices.com for a full library of senior care resources and our Choice Wizard. Explore, review, and select senior housing, aging care, and service options for free with the Choice Wizard. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this podcast.